The end. The after-hours doctor came after Annie left and doubled the morphine. Emma and I took the night shift together, the morphine being administered every half an hour. We sat up together as the rest of the household slept, and I talked to Emma to keep her awake. She didn't miss a beat. The dining room table spread before us, the rhythm of the night dictated by the preparation and delivery that left what seemed like brief moments in between. When the sun came up, Katrina and her father took over for a couple of hours, while Emma and I slept. But Katrina was disturbed by the emotion of it all and was happy to pass the job back to us. The doctor came back to check that she was no longer in pain, and for the first time she was able to confirm that she was without it. There was a danger that we would run out of morphine, but the doctor was diligent in locating a chemist that would fill a script on a Sunday, and Jimmy was sent off in the car to pick up the medication. Julia was driven by the need to sit up, to take control, but her body was so frail that we hardly dared to touch her. Her father and later Jimmy helped as we levered her into an upright position, using the pillows to buffer the impact of movement. But once she was upright, she would be overcome with exhaustion and we would lay her down again. The last of her struggles to maintain life. By mid-afternoon, the household was feeling the pressure, and Katrina, with Jimmy and her father, went off to her father's club to have a drink with his mates. Julia slept peacefully through the rest of the afternoon as Emma continued her work. And then, as the sun was setting, Julia woke as Emma and Ella and I entered her room. "What's happening to me, Mum?" she asked, and I replied, "You're dying." So she decided it was time to say goodbye. She said goodbye to her baby sister first, comforting her with the knowledge that indeed she had been there to see who her little sister Ella had become. And of course, all her love for her good big sister, who wept and wept, part of her soft nature. I was agitated, worrying that things would not go smoothly for her, as the others were still at the club. And I stepped forward to say my goodbye, but she said, "No, Mum, you're last." And with that, Katrina and Jimmy walked in the door, returned from the club, and she took her time to say goodbye to her twin, who wept by her side. Then Jimmy stepped forward to her blue bed, and she laughed as she reached for his hand and said, "Who's that black man holding my hand? Why, it must be Jimmy." And it occurred to me how little really he knew her, that he was even unaware that many of her boyfriends had been black. But she told him she loved him. There was no more she could do for him than that. And so he walked out into the blackness of the night and stood on the veranda overlooking the sea. And from some deep place within himself came a howl, a noise that pierced the night, like some beast mortally wounded. And back in her bed, Julia said, "Sorry, Jimmy." Her father had still not returned, and I could feel my anger rising at the notion that he should keep her waiting. But the girls reminded me of why we were there. So I explained that her father was running a little late because he was having a drink with his mates, and she was happy with that. He arrived quite soon and said his goodbyes, giving her the little pat on the face that he reserves as his expression of love. He prolonged his goodbye, unaware that I was waiting my turn, but I pointed it out and he accepted it graciously. "I can see them all waiting for me," she said as I took her hand. "You're off on your journey now," I explained, and she smiled at that and said joyfully, "New friends and new adventurers." It was time for us to leave her, as she and I understood, so I guided the others out of the room and asked if she was sure that we should go, and she said, "Yes, Mum, there is only one goodbye." We all sat in the lounge and listened to her through the baby monitor. Katrina and her father were disturbed, feeling that they should be in the room with her, but I insisted that Julia had said goodbye and needed her time alone. We were there together for a couple of hours, but Jimmy, Katrina and her father went off to bed about 10 o'clock, unable to listen any longer. I suggested that Julia's father sleep on the floor next to Julia's bed, but I asked him not to interfere with Julia, explained that she was no longer troubled by thirst or pain. Emma, Ella and I listened as Julia took account of her life. We were struck by her politeness, a childlike quality to her voice. "Let's share," she repeated, her convictions clearly stated. No torment of any kind. Emma continued administering the morphine, but Ella and I would attend to give her a support. Julia was unaware of us, busy with her own affairs. Ella dozed off at about midnight, and Emma and I continued until just after 1 a.m, when we entered her room and saw her face contorted by her final struggle. I called Jimmy and the others, and Jimmy was there in half a second. "See her face," I said, and with that she was gone. The men stripped her and washed her and laid her out in her blue sheets, and when it was done, I went home to my bed to watch the sun rise through my window. The next morning it was discovered that the owls had gone forever. I saw my daughter's death mask hard upon her face, but I heard the hard last breath of her and saw the peace in its place.